The bullet through Denny's window made perfect sense with all the dirt he'd been getting into lately on patrol.
I was on duty that night, me and Joey. We just, stopped by to grab something to eat, make sure the Nielsen boxes were working, It's a good thing we did.
The blood was from Stewie mostly. Stewie, we call him. He's Denny's youngest. He's about 2.
When the shards of glass fell, I couldn't get to Connie and the kids as fast as Joey did on account of my leg. And if Joey hadn't covered them all the way he did, it could have been much worse, believe me.
Noel and Connie got cut up on their hands and arms from reaching out to cover their heads from the falling glass.
So I grabbed my holster, my service revolver off the coat hook by the door where I hung it when I came in. I would have been more prepared, but on duty or not, Connie does not like me wearing it around the house.
Stewie got the worst of it. This one shard hit him right along the side of the head.
The time I limped out to the road, I saw the back end of a late model Le Mans. No plates, hauling off, the back bumper tied with a rope. And I know it's a Le Mans because me and Joey, as kids, we used to hang out on the Dan Ryan overpass and ID cars by their taillights. I was always better at it than him. No contest. So I got off a shot or 2. Well, maybe 3 or 4. Heat of the moment. I don't remember. I just wanted to put out a tire, shatter the back window, and the back of the motherfucker's skull too, maybe. But all I did was tick the plastic on one of the tail lights so it glowed, a glint of white out one side, and the red. It looked like this demon eyeball. Then it vanished.
What really made Denny nuts that night was Stewie wasn't crying. He was just sitting on the couch. All this glass, whole side of his head slick with red, and his pajamas was soaked with it.
I just thought, Jesus Christ, no, the glass went into his head.
He backhanded Connie for some reason.
She went fucking berserk. Hello?
I dialed 911, but instead of waiting for an ambulance, Denny told Connie to get Noel out into the squad car.
I grabbed Stewie away from Joey and I wrapped him in a blanket because I figured in a legitimate emergency, I used the siren, the lights. I could get him to Masonic Hospital faster than any motherfucking ambulance, right? That's logical. I mean, isn't that logical?
There was a Cubs game that night. Traffic was terrible.
I mean, what is it with some people? I got a legitimate emergency on the seat next to me here, and they know the law, they see the blues, they hear the siren, and still the self-absorbed motherfuckers don't pull over. Everybody in so much of a hurry to get someplace that you don't think 15 seconds sooner makes all the difference or something. Fucking nuts is what it is.
Talk about nuts. It's nuts too the way Denny wouldn't let me or Connie hold Stewie while he was at the wheel. Crazier the way he was driving, up on sidewalks, playing chicken with pedestrians. Even me, working the streets, I'd never seen so much blood. I mean, the blanket Denny had wrapped around Stewie was soaked like a sponge, and Denny driving like a madman, one-handed. 3 people were hurt in that collision with the ambulance that he caused when he charged that red light, the very ambulance that was on its way to help us. But Denny didn't care. I was in the back with my arms around Connie and Noel, trying to keep them from, breathing too hard so that they don't hyperventilate. And no way Denny had to slug Connie like that to settle the argument either. She wasn't anywhere near berserk. She sided with me. That's what really set him off. She wanted to wait for the ambulance. He wanted to drive. Denny had to do things his way. By the time we got Stewie into the emergency at Masonic, he was already in shock.
So I hand Stewie over to the nurse, and the way Connie's looking at me, gashes in her arm, cut on her lip, it's like she's going in shock on me too. It's like it's my fucking fault or something. I mean, their faces, Noel too, they're looking at me, blood draining from their faces, blue lips and shivering. Your own family. I mean, you are not God. Not even his fucking friend of his, You can only do what you can fucking do,
Doctor came out after a few hours and told us that the glass severed the artery along the side of Stewie's neck, and they had no way of knowing the effects not till he comes out of anesthesia. He was critical, but stable. Some nerve damage, maybe some brain damage. The doctors weren't 100% sure. Under 2 years old, it's hard to assess. Connie, she wanted to stay at the hospital the whole night, but when they wouldn't let her stay by Stewie in intensive care, she went a little...
A little? She was fucking hysterical. And choosing this opportune moment to ride my ass, all of a sudden, Joey's the only one she'll listen to. So he talked her into going home, eventually.
It took a long time to get Noel to sleep. He kept telling Denny, "I'm scared, Daddy. Don't go."
Little shit wouldn't even let me turn out the fucking lights.
So after Denny lost patience,
I fucking spanked him. He's my kid. You do him no fucking favors raising him to be tit glomming mama's boys. Believe me.
I went into Noel's room, put him up on my lap, read him a few stories, talked him down while Denny called the incident in.
And I'm sorry, it's a blood thing. Joey will tell you I got obsessed. Maybe I did. But a wolf, any animal, any animal kill to protect its young. What are you going to tell a wolf tearing apart your jugular because you're fucking with its kids? You're obsessed, Mr. Big Bad. See you shrink. Little couch time. Get over it. Joey, he should be teaching Buddhism to Lutherans. Him with his slippery fucking slope. So I shake down a half dozen hookers working on the North Avenue Bridge once or twice a week. They got cash to spare. Plenty of ways to make up for lost income. I turn ahead. Permit human nature to progress its merry way. I keep the pimps off their backs, they stay freelance, and everybody's happy. Serve and protect. That's what I do. If not a plainclothes promotion, why not a little under-the-counter compensation for going above and beyond the call of duty on a regular basis?
It's a slippery slope, then.
It's a community. I take care of them, they take care of me. Everybody gets along. Joey and me. Though we don't always see eye to fucking eye on this, but I tell the hard line, as soon as you find yourself a nice girl, you settle down, pop a few long balls over the fence into Waveland Avenue off your own bat, the world will look entirely different, my friend. And you know what he tells me?
Kids or no, it's still a slippery slope, Denny.
My kids are hurt. One of my babies. It's something in the blood, way beyond logic. You spill my kid's blood, you spill my blood. It gets my blood up. I can't help it. I filed a report on this drive-by to make the model, no plates, right tail right, ticked like the eye of a demon, and sure, Dickerson, the yobber, tells me to follow protocol. Lombardo, let the dicks handle it.
We were already skating on thin ice over at Denny's when we should have been on duty. Top of that, using the squad car to get Stewie to Masonic, the accident along the way.
Hey, it's not like it could have been avoided or anything. I mean, Christ, it's my kid's life on the line. And I told him, yes, sir, Captain Dickerson. Proper channels, Captain Dickerson. Everything by the book, Captain Dickerson. Like I'm going to leave the safety of my family in the hands of the fucking quota squad. You fuck that shit.
Then he pulled the slug, a 44 Magnum, out of the plaster behind his TV. And sure, the dicks were pissed because he messed with their crime scene. But then he told them,
oh, this is my effing house and my effing TV, and I do whatever the F I want in the effing thing in it. Capiche, gentlemen?
44 Magnum could have been used by any number of characters Denny and I encounter on patrol. But the most likely scenario, Denny tells me,
that spineless rat fuck Walter Lawrence.
The pimp that Denny beats up on a semi-regular basis for whaling on Rhonda.
Pimps. It's like a job requirement, these guys. First, they gotta be ugly as cat shit, and second, they got themselves convinced they're God's gift to womankind. Okay, so most guys foot that bill, but on top of it, pimps got this smell about them. I call it moral rot. You can actually smell the putrid way of thinking wafting off these guys like rotten flesh. I mean, they honestly think they are helping these girls, but actually, they're keeping them enslaved. If not with drugs, with fear, and they reek of it. I mean, if they really want to help them, they do something like Joey suggests. You put them through a beauty school or a secretary school, something respectable, you know? But pimps, the pimp mentality, what do? They take pot shots at my family through my fucking front window.
While Denny had it out with the detectives, I tried to calm down Connie. She was a nervous wreck. I told her to try laying off the Valium, but after Denny chased out the dicks, he told her she needed another one and poured half a glass of scotch to chase it down. By the time I finished reading 3 Billy Goat's Gruff the 5th time to Noel, the 24-hour board-up guys were over chipping out the glass and nailing huge sheets of plywood up over what was left of Denny's front window. I heard Denny out in the front yard, bickering with him, shouting at him. He was pissed that he had their company name and number across the plywood in red ink. Kept talking about how much he was going to bill him for advertising. Connie was woozy from the Valium, the scotch, and she walked in on me in Noel's room, just as Noel was drifting off to sleep in my arms. She waved me out of the room. I tucked Noel into bed and slipped out into the hallway. And there, Connie whispered to me that if the doctor pulled her aside and told her that if Denny would have waited for the ambulance, that if Denny had not driven, Stewie's blood loss could have been less severe and the possible brain damage and nerve damage might have been reparable, if not preventable altogether. It was all a lot of maybes, and that's what I told Connie, and she said she knows, but Denny does this all the time. He thinks he can do everything himself. She told me about his leg. Then he refused to go to the doctor for it. That's the way he was. He wouldn't take any money from Connie's mom and dad for the new home. Not the payment, the mortgage, anything. No, Connie told me. Denny insisted on working 2, sometimes 3 jobs to make ends meet. Denny never worked any 3 jobs. He barely worked the one. Unless you counted shaking down hookers and tavern keepers as sidelines, he'd stay out late, tell Connie he was moonlighting. Even then, I knew Denny was out dicking around. Putts that I am, I always covered for him. He was my best friend, my partner. Always back to back me and Den. I'd been covering for him for so long, I couldn't keep all the lies straight anymore. So I told her, Denny's not working any 2 or 3 jobs. All that money, she asked me, where's he getting it, Joey? I didn't answer right off. I don't want to know, do I? She says. And I say, he's taking care of his family. Connie's laugh was full of disgust. This fat lip that he gave me is taking care of his family. A bullet through our front window is taking care of his family, Stewie. Connie kind of broke down and slipped into my arms. And as I held her in the hallway that night to comfort her, it dawned on me why all the women I dated over the years had faded out of my life with a shrug. Holding Connie, the light, the strength that she gave me, I never had alone. She had no way of knowing it, but it was her telling me that I'm so good to Denny, so good to her, so good to the kids, Hines even. But it's Connie, really. She has that kind of effect on me. It all comes from her, and it always has. With Stewie's life in the balance, everything kind of opened up between us that night. I think Connie suspected the worst before I ratted Denny out. She just put up with Denny's bullshit for the sake of the kids. Plus, she loved him, too. I stood up at their wedding, no doubt about that. Connie would forgive Denny anything for clocking her like he did, cutting her lip with that stupid faux Super Bowl ring that he wore. Kids, he beat the crap out of me daily. 3 times a day if we were bored. I'd never cry or complain about it because if I did, I was afraid Denny would stop being my best friend. And the thought of that hurt worse than anything. Well, the board-up guy's gone. Denny limped up the stairs. It wasn't me holding Connie that got him suspicious as much as the fact that me and Connie both, we pulled away from each other at the same second. We stood there off balance, this cloud of shame hanging between us because we both ratted Denny out. And without exactly meaning to do so, allied against it. You know how you know someone so well that you can read them in an instant? Denny read the guilt on us easily as we could read the suspicion on him. I stayed on the couch that night. I've done it a lot lately, even though I suspected he'd like to toss me out of my ear. Then he thought it was a good idea that I played watchdog. Hines was hiding under the bed in Noel's room and wouldn't come out, so I stood guard in case Walter Lawrence came back with something more potent than a .44 Magnum.